So yes, hello everyone, welcome to this online lecture and let's start today's topic. The topic of today is about the administration of the East India Company, how this the administration or the governance was done by the East India Company officials or by their respective company, and then how the administration was shifted towards the crown after the revolt of 1857. So we will be looking through from the 1773, that was the first regulating act, till the 1900 sorry 1893 rule regulating act, and or the charter act, and post that we will be discussing on the another chapter. So yes, first of all, we already know that after the battle of Plassey and after the battle of Buxar, these two important events changed the course of the entire Indian history, and this also led to the two things. First is revenue generation or the revenue collection of the Indian territories towards the Britishers, and second is the now coming up of more regulations or the laws by the East India Company. So the company held considerable political sway over a significant portion of the Indian population by the end of 1760s. The governance of the company, headquartered in Britain, posed challenges for the British government due to distance and evolving relationship between the two entities. So there are the two entities. The number one entity is about the company, and the second entity is the British government. And if you remember, it was the British government or the British crown who gave the charter or the permission to the English East India Company to run or to trade initially in the Indian region. However, that trading later on transformed towards the governments and all. So this there were two entities. Over the time, the company evolved into a formidable empire, blending its role as a trader as well as the governing authority, as I have told you. And it became evident that the company held substantial power and sovereignty over the entire Indian territories through wars, through various treaties, through various alliances system. The company had now control over the vast or the large area of Indian territorial empire. The Britain government concluded that company could no longer operate independently of the state, and they needed the help of the British government as well. So even prominent figures like Robert Clive or Warren Hastings acknowledged the potential benefits of establishing constitutional reforms or the relationships with the crown. So now they established, and that is why there was one question, that whether this expansion or the consolidation of British Indian Empire was sudden, or was or it took place due to some planning. Because if there was no planning, then why the British crown got involved in the administration of the East India Company? So there is one set of historians who say that the agenda of British government was clear from 1750s onwards, that they want to colonize Indian subcontinent. So following the Battle of Buxar in 1764, the East India Company gained control over the Diwani, that is the collection of revenue, in Bengal, Bihar and Odisha region. And the British government initial involvement in Indian affairs occurred in 1769, where it demanded 10% share of the spoils, totaling 4 million annually. So what government of British, they demanded that they said that you are having a large chunk of profit from India, that is the East India Company. A company is having a large chunk of profit through India, and so we, as your parent organization or your parent government, we also need a share from your profit. So they demanded 10% of the share, which at that period of time, roughly around 4 million euro pounds. That was a very huge money. So now just remember, that was a 10%. So how much profit the East India Company must be having. However, for 7 years, a dual system of government persisted after that of 1764 and after the Treaty of Allahabad, wherein the company held responsibility without, where the company had ruling or the authority without any responsibility. So all the responsibility was with the Nawab of Bengal, and all the revenue and all the law and order was done by the Britishers, while its Indian representatives bore all the responsibility but lacked the authority. By April 1772, a select committee of parliament was established in Britain to investigate the situation in India. What is going on in India? Whether the administrators who are ruling in India are doing it fine or not. So, all these questions were asked, whether they should continue with the same ruling or not. And for all these questions, a select committee was established by the parliament in 1772 in the British Parliament. And by August, the company sought a loan of 1 lakh euros. Now, this was a big question. Why? Because there was so much of profit, number one. Number two, the thing is that all the officers of the East India Company, they were having humorous wealth. Look, they were having large number of wealth. But when the company asked for the loan, this gave a bell to the government of Britain that something wrong is going on. There is rampant corruption in the East India Company where officials are becoming rich, but the company is not getting any profit. Thus, the control over the company affairs started. The British government faced challenges in defining the relationship between the East India Company and its territories, as well as establishing effective control over the company's officials, soldiers stationed in distant India. They were not able to control the company servants. The British government. The British government were not able to look after what they are doing in India. How? In their name, how in the name of the Queen, they are becoming a part of this corrupt system. Moreover, corrupt concerns arose regarding the centralizing control over the widely dispersed British possessions in Bengal, Madras, and Bombay. The British government saw from Britain that there is a centralized control. There is no decentralized power. All the decisions are now being taken from the Bengal seat, and the other provinces are not able to govern their own territory. So this was the important challenges, and by now the British decided to regulate the company to bring some order into its business, and thus the gradual control or regulation started through the various regulating acts. So please don't get confused that these regulating acts are to regulate the Indian affairs. They were to regulate Indian affairs indirectly, but these regulating acts directly were there from the British side to control the East India Company's affairs. So now the very first regulating act of 1773. So the regulating act marked the British government's intervention in India's affairs, aiming to regulate operations of the East India Company, recognizing the company's expanded role beyond trade and into administration and politics. So the British government now saw that the East India Company is not just limited to trade. They are now into the administration also, and they are into the politics also.